Oh, okay. We're recording? Oh, okay. Where's okay. You're gonna share the screen now? Okay. She's hiding. She's right down here. Hi, Lisa.
Good morning. How are you, Mary Jo?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excited to be here. This is going to be so fun.
Oh, yes, I'm excited you're here too. So as you can see, there's 4 people visible for the recording. So if you want your video to go away, turn off your video. So here we are. Oops, I have to have my notes. This is the second half of our flower therapy lesson. In the first lesson, we learned how to use the pointed petal technique to make dahlias. We learned to make the coin ruching technique to make daisies, and we learned the mountain folding technique to make geraniums. Of course, any type of flowers can be made. And then we also learned how to make the easel so that it can be used as a surface to create a composition. For this second class, we're going to learn the flat loop technique, the knotted loop technique. We're going to learn how to make the folded rows with tutu. And we're going to learn how to use all the bits, all your little tiny leftover bits to make other things with it. And we're going to learn how to make the needle book. But we're just going to touch on this kind of briefly. So these are the flower therapy kits. So this is the needle book kit. Comes with all the supplies, the beads and whatever. And any one of our 10 colorways are available to be a needle book, but we only show 3 specifically on our website. So there are 10 colorways altogether, and these are the elements, all the elements, and it makes this design. All these elements can also make this design or this design. So it's a versatile little kit. This is also showing the folded rows with tutu with a little bit of embroidery. And of course, I'm highlighting my mom and dad on their wedding day. All right, let's get started. Move all this stuff out of the way for a little bit. I'm going to put it over here for now. All right. We're going to start with we're actually going to start with tools. These are the tools that you're going to be needing for today. So we have a bead board where I've put all the assortment of beads that come in the kit. And I have a beading needle and it's threaded with beading thread. You can use the milliner's size 10 needle as well for beading. Some of the beads the needle will not slip through. We also have a circle template and a pencil. We have beading thread and regular thread. We have thread conditioner. And I have small applique pins. These come in your kit. And we have an assortment of needles, which is going to be chenilles that you would have. These are included in the kit too, yes. Size 24, 22, 20, and a size 10 milliners. And the beading needle is also included. You need a small scissors, and we need a needle nose pliers. So those are all the tools that will be needed today. In the past, we've used for ribbon work, we've used spray starch to give a little body to the ribbons, but we're doing ribbon embroidery techniques this time primarily. So I don't spray starch the ribbon for that, for the ribbon embroidery techniques. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get all my tools available for me. So let's start with the flat loop technique. So these are the instructions for the flat loop, and you'll see that there's a little template that is to help us make the flower in the size that we want it to be made based on the amount of ribbon that is in the kit. But it is not the only way or size. This is arbitrary, an arbitrary size. We're learning the flat loop technique. So these are variations of the flat loop technique. In our kit, the flower look like this right here. But this is a variation where there's stacked ribbons, 7 millimeter and 3.5 millimeter ribbons. These two are the exact same color. This one is dark to light center. This one is light to dark center. Also, the flat loop technique is shown right here on this little flower for our mandolin. And it is also in our tree. So I use this technique a lot. And then this is a large version of the flat loop technique where the 13 millimeter ribbon is approached from a ribbon work perspective, and the 7 millimeter then goes into embroidery. So it's a combination of both. And here again is the flat loop technique. 1, 2, 3. So it's a versatile technique. So we start by, you can either place your piece of interfacing, that one of the pieces of interfacing that comes with the kit, onto the paper and trace it, or you can use a template. And it says that we need to do a 1-inch circle. So we trace that, zoom, and then it's a 7/16 inch circle, 7/16? Yeah, for the center, and we trace that. Now we're ready to start embroidering. So let's take our 7 millimeter ribbon. So I have it nicely pressed. And this outer circle is just to help you make the size and the length of each petal the same. That's the purpose of the outer circle. The inner circle is where we'll do the work. So I'm not going to put a knot on the bottom, on the end of the ribbon of any kind, because it will get in the way. So I'm just going to come up into the interfacing, pull through, and then just leave a little tail on the back side. So to make the flat loop, you fluff the ribbon down to the entry point, fold it in half, and extend it to that outer circle line, and then pierce through the ribbon again on the inner traced circle. And so when you do that, you're going to also grab the underneath layer, and then we're going to pull through. Sometimes you need a needle nose pliers for this, and sometimes you don't. So just be aware. And then we pull through. So that's our first one. Now we're going to come back up into the ribbon, and I'm pushing the ribbon out of the way from the underside, and then we're coming back up into the interfacing right next to our first stitch, and then pull through and repeat the process of folding the ribbon in half, piercing through both top and bottom layers. Check to see that you've grabbed it. I think I need to go a little bit further back, and then pull through. And I am holding on to everything with my top and bottom fingers that are on top and bottom of the interfacing, just so that I don't pull anything through, because it's very easy to just sink these stitches. So I'll come up in the interfacing at the inner circle, fold the ribbon back, extend it to that outer circle, pierce through both layers. And now I think I'll go ahead and use the needle nose to pull through. And make sure that you keep your fingers over and under the work, because if you don't, you'll start pulling, the stitches will start pulling through. So we're going to continue to do this all the way around. And now you have a half of a yard in your kit for this particular layer of the stitch, and just use it all up. One of the purposes of one of our intentions with flower therapy was to not have any waste. So we want you to use every last bit of the ribbon up. So let's say we've got that done, right? So here is the first, the bottom layer completely done, and that's what it looks like on the back. And I trimmed off the excess ribbon when I was through, and now we'll grab that with our next layer. So again, I'm not going to put a knot. Well, you know what? I am going to put a knot. That seems okay. So it's a soft knot. So now we are going to stitch just to the front, just to the inside of the previous layer, of the bottom layer. So up in the fabric, and then again, you do the same thing where you fold the ribbon back on itself. And you can either stack it all the way out, or you can have it be like a scant 1/8 of an inch difference between this edge here and this edge here. Then we're going to pierce and stitch. So what's so neat about our ribbon is there's just so many different color combinations that you can create. I mean, you can do your own flower therapy colorway and make the flower therapy in the colors you want. We're just going to keep doing that, and we'll go all the way around. I think actually I have to change my glasses. So up in the interfacing, just in front of the previous layer, previous row stitches, and pull through. And we will continue to do that all the way around until the entire space has been filled in. Okay. What? Hi, Deborah. What? Okay. Now, the center is going to be filled in with the ribbon from this, this flower. So we're going to go ahead and set this one aside. The second loop, do you match the number of loops? Nope, you don't have to worry about matching the number of loops. There are too many loops to count. There are too many loops for the eye to count. So you don't have to worry about that. But do use all the ribbon up. So if after you're through, after you've gone around, one full time around, if you see a gap, like for instance, that might be considered a gap right there, go back and throw in another stitch. You should have enough to do a couple, 2-3 stitches. And the thing that's cool about both of these 2 stitches that we're going to do is there's practically no ribbon waste at all. So in order for us to finish this flower, we need to start this flower. And eventually the center of the flat loop will be beaded a little tiny bit. All right, so I'll set this aside for now. and we'll come back to it. Well, yeah, we'll come back to it. Okay, so that is the flat loop technique. Any questions, guys? So now we're going to do the knotted loop process. So the knotted loop is this flower right here. This one right here. This is a smaller version of the knotted loop. Let's see. These are bud type versions of the knotted loop. I have a question about how am I ending the ribbon. So on the ribbon on the underside, I would just take the ribbon, lay it across the back of a previous ribbon, and then stitch through. Stitch through the ribbon that's I'm laying it across and the ribbon beneath it. And that's and I do that 2 times. That locks the ribbon. And thank you for that question. That's a great question. And then I would just trim this off. Sometimes if there is not enough ribbon even to do that, I would just take a needle and thread and whip stitch the end of the ribbon. If you do a large flower and your ribbon becomes creased as you go along, do you iron it? You can. One thing that's happened, I don't know if you've noticed it, but this ribbon used to be very, it used to be more densely woven, and it is not anymore. So it does get these little like stripes in it. It doesn't usually fold in half though when you're working with it. And I usually will just use my fingers to broaden it out. Like I'm broadening down to the entry point right there, and then I'm folding the ribbon back. And then I grab it. And I think the key is to always have your hands, your fingers over and under the work, and that helps to keep the ribbon broad and protected. So I hope I've answered that question. Anyway, so the knotted loop technique is, so we have it in buds right here. And, okay, well, I lost it. Oh, here it is. Thank you, Claire. This is also the knotted loop technique. So, and there are 3 versions of it as far as size is concerned. So, one of the things we did for flower therapy so that we could keep the kit costs down was to limit the number of ribbons that we used. So we went, so this has 2 layers, where this has 4 or 5 layers. So that's the difference. Just know that you can make these flowers as voluptuous as you want. And you can also make them out of really wide ribbon if you want. You go through a ton of ribbon, but that's okay. This is a variation that we've taught of the knotted loop that we've taught before for when we made the clovers. And so it's basically the same technique. It's a knotted loop, but the loops are entwined while stitching. So it's just ever so slightly different looking, but also very cool. So let's get started with the knotted loop. So again, we have to trace our circle, and the outer circle is 1 1/4 inches, and the inner circles are 5/8 of an inch and 1/2 of an inch. So we will do the work on the beginning work on the 5/8 inch circle. So let's get started with that. Because I'm starting with the 3.5 millimeter ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and put a soft knot on the end. Now, for this flower, there is a yard allotted for the flower. And for the 3.5 millimeter ribbon, use it all up. Use it all up. So I'm up in the interfacing, I'm smoothing down to the entry point, and then I'm going to just put a knot in the ribbon. So the tricky part is figuring out where to put the knot. So you just have to mess with that a little bit, but I usually have to scooch the knot location down a little bit until it's almost where it needs to be, maybe a little bit less, and then pull it tight. Now, grab a hold of the knot, just the knot, and then slightly overlap the two layers. So it kind of makes a loop, but it's not a layered loop like we did the flat. See how it has a little bit of a space there instead. And then I'm pushing the ribbon out of the way on the underside, and I'm going to come back up right next to the first stitch. Tie a knot, scooch, get it where we want it, make it tight, grab hold of the knot and overlap the ribbon at the entry point. Let's do that one again. And I have my fingers, notice I kept my fingers over and under the work. Up in the interfacing, form your little knot. Okay, so I'm way off there, right? So what I need to do is just loosen it a little bit. And then when I'm there, I pull it tight. Now, what I'm not doing is just doubling it up like so. If you overlap it, see if I explain it. If I overlap it more like this, there's a little bit more of a fluff to the stitch. Now, another thing you'll notice is the stitches are all a little bit different in size, even though I have this line of demarcation, right? So when you're all done with the flower, with this layer, you can go back in and like give a little tack to the loop so that they all end up being about the same size. And generally, unless it's really a big difference, you're going to have so many stitches here that you won't notice that a size is not exactly right. So I would continue to do this all the way around, and again, tie off on the underside by laying the ribbon across across the back of any previous stitch. You stitch through the ribbon that's laid over and the back side of the stitch. Don't stitch through to the front at all. And you do that 2 times. Fingers always over and under the work. And then trim it off, trim the ribbon off. So that would be done until you would continue to go all the way around to create the bottom petal layer. Does it look better to pull the knot is pulled forwards and visible? I like to, well, I don't know if I'm going to explain this right, but I like to pull the knot tight. And some people pull the knot a little bit loose. I think the loose knot gets lost. So I always try to make the knot visible but tight. And I am using Pelon's non-woven mid-weight interfacing to build the flowers onto. And the reason I like to do this is because it makes them all movable. And it gives them stability. So instead of a flower just being just something wispy that doesn't seem to have a whole lot of value, it just gives the flower so much more weight. And so that's why I like to build them this way. Of course, if I'm doing embroidery, then I'm stitching generally right into the fabric, but not always. It depends on what I'm doing. Okay, so we would continue with the second petal layer. So this is the 2mm ribbon, and it's going to be the same approach where we tie the knot. You have to adjust it. The hardest part is just finding how and where to adjust it, and you'll get that figured out, and you have to grab a hold of the knot. And, you know, my suggestion is that you're not standing up when you're doing this. You want to be comfortable. Yeah, and allow yourself to get into that Zen place, whatever that is. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and continue all the way around, right? This is the 2mm ribbon. You're going to end up with about 9 inches left of this 2mm ribbon. And with that, you're going to fill in the center of this. But let's finish this one first. So now here we have our cute flower, and see how darling it is in these colors. So this one is old picket fence and light grass. This one is lemon, lime, and willow. And this is what I look at them together. I love them. Okay, so something I did for this one, just show you a variation, is I cut a little piece of batting and I laid it down in the center. So just like it has to be a little tiny piece, has to be smaller than the circle, smaller than the center circle. So I don't know, little. And then I placed it in the center and stitched over to cover it. And what it did is it raised the center a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but that's just a variation. Otherwise, you're going to just fill the center with beads and sequins, and it makes it look a little bit like a jeweled brooch, I think. So, and the beading is just done where you you just bring your beading needle to the center and you start throwing down some beads and sequins. What you have to do is layer it. It's a layering process and it takes a little bit of time. So you'll just continue to fill the whole entire space until it's all beaded. And then one more thing I might do is run a thread around the innermost circle, like a gathering thread. And then what I'll do is I'll pull that gathering thread tight, and it'll pucker up the center, and it'll make the center poof out a little bit. So that's what I did around this one. See, so you can see on the back it's poofed, it's puckered up. So all kinds of variations. So let's say that we saved our ribbon so that we could do the center of this guy. So it's just done by coming up in the center and doing what I call is a looped ribbon stitch. So you just push a loop with the ribbon, stitch down. And if you're careful, you can make a second loop with that same stitch. And just continue to go around doing that to fill the center completely. And you just have to be careful and make sure you stop pulling. Because if you don't stop pulling, you'll pull not only one loop out, but two. And that's that. Okay, now we have to move on. So I'm going to teach you now how to make the folded rows with tutu from start to finish. All right, so I have the 7mm ribbon. I have a 9-inch length here. This is all you need of the 7mm ribbon to make this flower. If you're going to make it with 13mm ribbon, you'll need about 13 inches. If you're going to make it with a 3.5mm, you'll need about 5 inches. It's really cute in the 7mm ribbon. So what you do is you take an end and you fold it down. I have needle and thread handy and I have no knot. I have doubled thread though, and I conditioned the thread. All right, so I fold down that end and then I fold the whole thing over on itself. From this edge now, I'm gonna roll the ribbon. So I make a tight little coil. So you see I have a tail and I have a coil. So now I'm gonna come up in the ribbon at the base of the roll and take a couple of stitches in place. And I'm gonna do probably 3.
Mary Jo, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Lisa.
Yes.
How many rolls did you do?
I probably did 2 or 3. Go fold over, then roll, roll, roll. Yeah, okay. I usually do 3 rolls. I do as many rolls as I need until it feels like I can grab it and it won't go wimpy on me. All right, so as soon as you feel like you can tug on the thread and it's not going to come out, then you've got enough stitches in there and you can remove as much of the excess thread as possible. Okay, now we're going to fold the ribbon to the back and okay, let's talk about things. This is the tail. This is the tail right here. This little tiny piece is the center or the center post or the coiled center. So we're going to fold the ribbon diagonally to the back. And there is a little angled fold. Now we're going to roll the ribbon and roll the center post up, but I lost it. Roll the center post up to that fold. And as you do that, the fold is going to change. So, and you have to force the center post to align with the edge of the fold. Now I took a couple of stitches just so it will hold that one time. Now do it again. Fold to the back. Do you see the diagonal fold there? Roll. After you have made the center post, the ribbon, the bottom edge of the ribbon will not line up ever again. So you have to pay attention to aligning the edges of the center post with the fold from the ribbon. So that, and I took a stitch. Usually when I'm making these, I don't take a stitch at all until I'm through rolling it. But I suggest that you do that. Take the stitch so it'll hold. So we're going to fold it again and roll. Fold and roll. Fold and roll. And I'm going to do one more. And I'm going to grab the whole thing And now I'm going to secure all those rows. And I'm using a thread color that does not match so that you can see what I'm doing. But I think it'd be better to use a thread color that would not be visible because it can show eventually. So, and I got a little off right there, but I can go in and fix that. Okay, you get the gist, I hope. Actually, I'm going to go in there and grab that. It just needs to be tacked down, actually. Let's see. No, I didn't get it. Okay, well, that's better. But in the meantime, I have a mess here. I'm going to start over. Okay, where's my ribbon? Oh, where did I do my ribbon? Oh, this is fun. I found it. Okay, so I'm going to do that again.
I'm glad you're starting over. I can use a second chance at this. Thank you.
Fold down, fold over, roll, roll, roll. Tack, no knot. 3 times in place. 1, 2, 3. Trim the excess. Drop the needle. Fold and roll. Fold and roll. Fold and roll. And whenever you feel like you're going to lose it, tack it. And then drop the needle. Again, fold. I fold and roll until half of the ribbon remains. Some people fold forward for this technique. And I've seen it both ways, and I think both work. So if that's how you were taught, feel free to do it that way, or if that's what you remember. So now I feel I've done half of the ribbon. I'm going to take a final tack. And then I'm going to grab it right here. So there's a lot of little stitches. Now, the folded rows, you might recall or have seen, ends here for most techniques. And when you go to put it on something, wherever, you have a pyramid that you have to place on point down. And I don't like that. I don't like that. So I've added a tutu. So I have half of the ribbon remaining. I'm going to turn the piece of ribbon upside down. And I already have my thread in place so that I can run a gathering stitch along the lower selvage edge.
For how long?
For the whole entire length of the ribbon that remains. And this is why we like to use the milliner's needle, because all that ribbon can remain on the needle. At the end, take your stitches from the lower edge up to the upper edge, upper selvage edge. Now we're going to pull through. Pull the gathering thread through. So this is what we have. So I'm going to take this is the tutu. I'm going to take it and wrap it around the base. And I don't generally look at my progress. I just do it. But what you want is for the tutu to encircle the whole center folded rows. So let's say we're happy with where it's at. So now I'm just going to actually going to get this out of the way because it's in my way. And I can see a little bit better now. So I'm going to stitch where the ruffle has begun and it's I'm overlapping the ends a little tiny bit. I'm going to stitch through the center post and out the back side. And I'm going to do this all in one step. Okay, we good? There. Okay. All right. I guess we lost. Hi, Jessica. Anyway, that's the folded rows. And I will take a couple more securing stitches on the back side so that the entire thing, the entire under is nice and flat. Trim it off. And that is the folded rows with tutu technique. When you have a lot of them together, they're beautiful, beautiful together. All right, now let's talk about using up all your little bits. So this leaf is a bit, and it's made from a tiny little scrap of 32 millimeter ribbon. So it doesn't matter that this is what, 2 inches? So what I'm doing is this is starched. Fold the ribbon down like you're making a prairie point, but then you also fold it in half. And by folding it in half, you're going to be able to create a leaf that curves a little bit. And then we're going to gather stitch. So no knot again. You need to take those 3 stitches in place. And then gather stitch. And then, whoopsie, pull that tight. You see how the leaf curves right there? That's because this edge is on the bias. So then what I like to do is pull that really tight and wrap the thread several times around our stitching area. And then I like to stitch a little bit further down and wrap the thread again. And secure your thread. And by doing this, I can cut that excess ribbon off right at the quick there. And the leaf won't come apart on me. So you can make one of these from your leftover mountain fold, actually. So that's one of the techniques to do. Another one is the Helen Gibb Rosette. So the Helen Gibb Rosette is made, well, you can make it from anything, but it's made from a little tiny scrap or this size is made from a little tiny scrap of the 13mm ribbon, which has already been interfaced. And you can usually make 2 of these from your leftover ribbon, and they will be of different ribbons. So you take the ribbon that's left over and you press down one edge, a scant, it's about 1/8 of an inch that it's been pressed down. Then we're going to take needle and thread, and you're going to do what Helen calls the U gather, which means that you start stitching down at this edge and no knot. You run your gathering stitch all the way across that folded edge and back down. And the reason why we do this technique where you stitch up and stitch down at the ends is so that you don't have to deal with ribbon ends that have to be folded under or whatnot. It's just a simpler, cleaner way to work. So let's say we've got this all gathered. So then you pull the gather stitches tight. And you pull it as tight as it'll go. Grab a hold of the gathers and secure your thread. Okay. It takes about 2 or 3 stitches. Okay, so now you have like a little fan shape, and you can keep it a fan shape if you want. It's super cute. Or you can overlap. Overlap the ends so that you can make a full circle. So you just have to fuss with it a little bit. And once you're happy with the overlap, you take a couple of stitches in place through the overlap to complete the Helen Gibb rosette.
Nice.
Yeah, so those are super cute too. And that's made from little tiny piece of ribbon. Let's see.
2.5, maybe.
Yeah, now 2.5, well, I've made it with 1.5 inch ribbon. Yeah. Then the next thing you can make is some more little pointed petal bits. So that's where, if you remember, we fold the ribbon forward, fold the ribbon, fold it forward, fold it back, put a pin, trim it off. We learned this in the first lesson. So you should be able to get, I think, 7 of these out of your scrap ribbon. So from that, you're just going to use the same pointed petal technique and gather stitch them together. So this one is a set of 3, one is a set of 4. I beaded them for the African violet. I put 6 of them together instead. And actually this little piece right here is the 7th one, and I just had it be a little tiny leaf. So it's versatile. You can do whatever you want to put them together. And if you have extra ribbon, use it, make something with it. And then the last one are these poofs. So the poofs is just done by, here's a little poof, 7mm ribbon. And they're just done by taking, actually you can make them from the 13 too if you'd rather make a poof than a rosette, you can do that too. But all you do is take a little scrap of the ribbon and fold it up and down, up and down, up and down. And then you stitch across it. Okay, so we have to have our little beginning stitch, 3 in place, 3 whip stitches in place, no knots. And then you stitch across. And I have to say, it's tricky to do this standing up. So I do a much better job when I'm sitting down. So there you see it, wrap. And you have wrap and secure your thread. And you have some poofs. And those little poofs are tucked in to the composition just to add to it all. There's one there. And let's see. I know there's another one in here. There. There's one there, there, and there. So I made 3 of those from leftover 7mm ribbon because we make 3 rosettes and 3 poofs. So those are all the bits. And like I said, if you have enough to make something from the leftover ribbon, make it, because it'll just add to your composition. So that's all. Those are all the techniques for the ribbon work and the ribbon embroidery. But now we're going to go on to, let's talk about the needlebook real quickly. All right. This is a piece of Timtex. Your kits come with Timtex and batting. The batting is only for the front piece. So pin the batting to the one of the outer Timtex pieces and trim it flush to the edge. Now what we're going to do is wrap your fabric around. Now when we first started doing these kits, we were able to get a lighter weight Noil chamois, and we can't get that anymore. So we included interfacing, but I don't think the new weight needs the interfacing. I just wanted to let you know. But you have just enough fabric in the kit to cut out your needlebook parts. And your pocket might be smaller than you want, but it still works. So the whole point of all these kits is to use it all up. So there's no waste. So whatever's left, you can just like throw in the trash and won't feel so bad about it. So I'm going to wrap the fabric snugly around. I'm going to pin it just to get it to hold. So then now I have a super long length of thread, and it's conditioned thread, and I have a knot. And I'm going to just grab this end here. So I am at the center of the longer side, and I'm going to go over to this side. And you want to pull that tight, okay? Don't buckle it, just pull it tight. Once you feel comfortable about the snugness, then to give it a little securing stitch. Now we're going to go from there, we're going to go right up to here and give it a little securing stitch. Normally, actually, I would have done this with cardboard and glue, but it was requested that it be a sewing project. So now I'm going to go down to the lower center edge. That's what we have. And from here, you can see I've already dished out the bulk from the corner. From here, we just sew all the way over to the corner. So, and this is the main aspect of the needlebook. Then I'm going to take my thread down to here so that I can pull this end over. I'm going to fold that raw edge up and fold it over. And now I'll give it a little pin. And I will continue to sew that edge until it is all snug all the way around. So it looks like this when it's done. So now you're going to have a front and an inside front, and a back and an inside back. So there'll be 4 pieces that you have to do. front, back, inside front, inside back to cover with the Timtex. Okay, now the next thing that you're going to have to do is to make your little pocket. So you have a little tiny scrap of fabric for the pocket. And if you want, you can make this out of something contrasty. It doesn't have to be this. And I have pressed down a little hem, and that piece is just going to be wrapped around the inside front. So it looks like this. We have a little pocket here. And you're going to stitch that all in place all the way around, and especially take care of eliminating the bulk at the corners. So you always want to get rid of that bulk at the corners, and you want to have a nice clean finish at the corner there. So pay extra attention to that. So the whole pocket would be wrapped around, okay? I'm just going through it quickly. The next thing you have to do is to take the spine pieces and press the top and bottom edges down, and also clean out there's going to be excess fabric here, and that has to be cleaned away. So you can do it like this. You can trim it like this and fold those edges down, or you can do it like this. And the reason is because when you get to here, you don't want anything to show. See how you can see a little bit of the spine there? That's what we're trying to avoid. We want the spine to be hidden, so that's why we angle those edges a little bit. And then these guys get sewn together along the top and the bottom edges, and it's just a little whip stitch with needle and thread. You can make it a decorative stitch if you want. Then we pin the spine to, this is pinned to the back, and it could be pinned to the front. Doesn't matter where you start, but you have to stitch it all the way along here, through all layers down to there. And then you also have to stitch it invisibly along this edge here. So that will be done with not only just the back, but also the front. So we have that sort of thing. And you can stretch the spine a little bit so that it fits nice and flush. And just remember that you don't want to show here or here. So at this point, the front can be beaded with the sequins and trims, and with the sequins and beads, and you take your time doing all of that. You also have to put your composition together. So I usually will, there's a piece of interface in the kit. I draw a center line of demarcation and build my design around that. So all of that then gets trimmed away. So if you can see, there's my piece of interfacing that I've built the composition around. One thing you can do is put the flowers in place, and then you can take a photo of it, and then you can remove the flowers and put it back together based on the photo. So once that's done and you have your composition ready, then it all gets sewn to the front, and you could add the additional beading around it. You don't have to do this beading. You can put a trim on instead if you'd rather. And then you also have to apply or attach the ties. So the ties also get attached to the front and back. So like right there and right there. And then once all that's done, then you can sew. Well, actually, before you can sew that in place, you have to sew the pieces of felt in place. And this is wool felt that we include in the kits. So, and I mean, you can make the pocket as fancy as you want. So that's basically how the needlebook goes together. It's a little bit tricky. I think needlebooks are trickier than you'd think they would be. And that is everything for this lesson. So girls, we're going to go ahead and say hi and unmute yourselves, because we're I think I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful lesson. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think that needlebook is a class all to itself.